To the panel, it's my pleasure, and please give a welcome to our President, David Newby.
Sorry for our consultations up here, but as you may have noticed, we've had a few changes in the agenda today as a result of people's planes being delayed, so we've had to juggle a bit. Brothers and sisters, it's great to be with you here, and Phil, I appreciate the opportunity to talk a bit about international trade issues. And to, as you asked me to, try to sort of frame the discussion that we're going to have, hopefully with two speakers, to give you more detail, more insight into the issues of international trade, and in particular the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, if you look at Resolution 18, which you asked earlier today, you'll find an excellent list of the problems with the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But there is a larger context. And as some of you know, I could speak for hours about the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I'm not going to do that. But I have had a passion, maybe even a fixation on international trade issues ever since NAFTA. And I see some faces in the crowd here of some who were on our Wisconsin State AFL-CIO trip down over to Seattle in 1999 for the battle, what was later called the battle in Seattle against the World Trade Organization. And that was one issue that we actually won because we had great mobilization for fighting the expansion of the World Trade Organization. And we had an effective alliance between labor and the environmental movement. And that's what we've been able to recreate in the struggle against the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Now, Russ Feingold gave us a good introduction, as did Mark Pocan and certainly Damon Silver as well, to the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And Russ was talking about the fact that we have lost nearly 100,000 jobs in Wisconsin, good family supporting jobs, as a result of bad trade deals. I'm not going to repeat all the statistics. Those lost jobs, not only in Wisconsin, but the 5 million that we've lost to international trade in the United States. Obviously, that's important. I mean, these are people who have lost good jobs, have had their families uprooted, and very few of them were able to recapture the kind of income and support that they had in those jobs that they lost. But Russ also said another very important thing, and that is that these so-called free trade agreements are actually controlled by multinational corporations. Now, usually these agreements are framed as agreements between countries, and indeed, you know, they are signed by various countries, 12 Pacific Rim countries in the instance of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. But we're told to blame other countries for our loss of jobs, Mexico, China, other countries, and to blame the workers of those countries who work for less, who are paid a fraction, in most cases, of what American workers are paid. And we're essentially encouraged to see these people, these fellow workers, who are struggling as we are struggling. We're basically encouraged to see them as the enemy, not really the corporations who are actually taking our jobs. But taking the Trans-Pacific Partnership as our current example, what's it really about? Well, it's really about corporate power. And it's about multinational corporations realizing that they can get more through these free trade negotiations and the agreements than they could possibly get through legislation going through our American legislative process. It's literally a corporate coup. They figured out how to do it. Now, in the words of the head of the World Trade Organization back in 1995, he said, with regard to the work of the World Trade Organization, which was the first really major and perhaps the most important effort to cut tariffs and encourage more international trade, he said, we're writing the constitution of the global economy. Now, when he says we, he doesn't mean you, he doesn't mean me, he doesn't mean Congress, he doesn't mean even the United Nations. He means global multinational corporations. And it is indeed a corporate takeover, and perhaps the greatest threat to our democracy since World War II. And what we have to realize is that trade treaties are no longer really about tariffs or quotas that we hear so much about. Because in the TPP, for example, we already have bilateral investment agreements with 6 of those countries, 6 of the key countries. Free trade agreements like the Trans-Pacific Partnership are really about regulations. They're about laws that protect corporate profits, privatization, and corporate power in general. Now, the other speakers will be getting into a lot more detail on a lot of the issues of the Trans-Pacific Partnership. I'm going to limit myself to one issue, which the next speaker is also going to be talking to you about, and that's the investor-to-state dispute settlement system. How many of you heard about the ISDS? How many of you know something about it? That's pretty good, actually. But we need to learn a lot more. We need to learn more about it because it really exemplifies what these agreements are actually about and how corporations are using these agreements in order to increase their power. Investor-state dispute settlement systems have been incorporated in other agreements, including NAFTA and some before them. And originally, they were included in order to protect more advanced countries from having corporations nationalized in foreign countries. One example would be that when Mossadegh tried to nationalize the oil reserves and the oil system in Iran, and there was a great uproar by the oil companies. Unfortunately, we didn't use this investor-state dispute settlement system with them. We instead sent the CIA in to overthrow Mossadegh and put the Shah in power, and that took care of that problem for the corporations. Anyway, this system has not really affected us very much yet, because most of our agreements have been with less developed corporations that don't have foreign subsidiaries inside the United States. But this is how it works. If a government, say the United States, at all levels, whether it's national, state, or local, if they pass a new regulation or a law that, among other things, quote unquote, reduces expected future profits of a foreign, they can sue the United States for the amount of lost profits, past, present, and future. Now, American corporations can't do this locally, but foreign corporations have that power. And with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, which includes countries like Japan and Australia and New Zealand, which do have multinational corporations that have subsidiaries here in the United States, we can expect that they are going to use this system to their own benefit. Now, most importantly, when a corporation uses this system and sues the United States, it totally bypasses the American legal system. It doesn't go to American courts. It goes directly to the World Bank. And the World Bank appoints 3 international trade lawyers, most of them with a background of advising major multinational corporations. And these international trade lawyers hear the case, and they have unrestricted power to decide whether that case has merit and to assess damages from the country that is being sued. And there's no limit to how much they can set the penalties. And there is no appeal to their decisions. So essentially what has happened then is that because they have the total power to do this, and the issues over which corporations can sue would be wages, for example, perhaps an increase in the minimum wage, an increase in prevailing wage for construction, additional health and safety regulations, food safety regulations, laws to protect workers and communities, environmental regulations, and even financial regulations, such as those that were put in place after the crash in 2008 to try to put some restrictions on the big investment banks in the United States. Those could be challenged through the investor-to-state dispute settlement system. So what the ISDS really is a private legal system for multinational corporations that is essentially controlled by them, and it gives them a veto over local, state, and national laws and regulations that affect them. Guarantees their profits, and it provides compensation for lost profits that taxpayers, all of us, eventually have to pay. Again, as the head of the World Trade Organization said 20 years ago, we are writing the constitution of the global economy. And it's a constitution that leaves us out. It's a constitution that puts corporations and not people in charge. Globalization, including the Trans-Pacific Partnership, really means a multinational corporate coup. It means global corporate domination. Think about that. Because today's struggle against the Trans-Pacific Partnership is, in essence, actually taking the class struggle to a global level. Because free trade agreements are a tool to divide the world's working class through a worldwide race to the bottom, setting workers against each other as corporations threaten to move production to a country with the lowest wages, the fewest worker protections, and the weakest unions. And this really is a class war, because the workers of all countries are against the forces of capital, those who own the means of production in Buddhist terms. And once we realize that we are really in a global class war, we must unify in order to fight back. And we must unite all workers to fight back, or else we're going to lose this global war, and the 1% wins. And they win big, and it's going to be extremely difficult to fight back against them if we lose this struggle. It's the monster in the basement, as David Silver was saying. So we simply cannot let that happen. Now, to give you more information and more teaching, perhaps, about international trade and about what we're fighting with the Trans-Pacific Partnership, our first speaker is going to be Brooke Gouvin. She's with the Columbia Center on